After spending significantly more time in Grand Bazaar now, I felt like it's time for a second video on the game, simply because the game deserves it. Yes, it's actually that good. So very quickly the basics. You're playing as the new farmer of Zephyr Town, and right at the beginning, the mayor introduces you to your ultimate mission, which is to help Zephyr Town regain its former popularity by developing a massively successful bazaar with tons of stalls, tons of customers, and tons of sales. This bazaar is held weekly on Saturdays, so on the days leading up to Saturday, you're naturally going to give it your best to make as many awesome products to sell as possible. And this is where we arrive at the first aspect that positively surprised me despite my already high expectations. The amount of crops, processed goods, cooking recipes, and collectibles in general is simply outrageous. There's so much variety here, and it's a joy to keep working towards unlocking new stuff, trying new recipes, and processing your materials in the windmills. Speaking of windmills and wind in general, it's a very cool addition. The windmills are your go-to station to transform your basic crops or raw materials into stuff that sells for a ton of money later at the bazaar. But you can also use them to make gifts for your neighbors. The windmills actually process faster on windier days, and you have to protect your crops from typhoons. You can also use wind to your advantage yourself when using your glider. And the town itself is awesome. It's just the right size, so navigating around it doesn't feel tedious. And it's cool to not only see the actual residents and romanceable NPCs wandering around and going about their routine, also lots of passerbys. This gives the town a very lively and believable atmosphere. Speaking of romance, there are 12 dateable characters, and the game has voice acting for all major lines.
How are things over on the farm? Splendid! I'm glad to hear you're doing well.
I like that the romance progress isn't super fast. It's not like you give them 2 presents and they're already crushing on you. I think the pool of dateable characters is very convincing. I found most of them to be very interesting, and you may actually have a hard time deciding on who you want to pursue. The other non-romanceable characters are interesting as well, and expressive. Their dialogues never made me want to just skip through the conversations. Another thing I like about the game is that you can actually stay up until 5 AM if you want, before having to go to sleep. Not only does this allow for plenty of time to go about your farmer's life, but it's also simply cool to explore the town at night, take in some nice views, and relax. I believe most farming games look visually appealing at night, but unfortunately many force you into bed around midnight. Something I straight up dislike is the fishing, which is unfortunate because it's one of my favorite aspects in games like Stardew Valley. The fishing here is very boring because you just press buttons and that's it. There's no feeling that the fish is putting up a fight or anything like that. And the game's animal care, on the other hand, is intricate and has substance. It doesn't end at feeding your animals. You have to make sure to give them plenty of grazing time outside on sunny days, and make sure to not place them outside when it's rainy, and hold and pet them each day. Larger animals will also have to be shorn and brushed regularly. If you don't do that, the animal's health will worsen over time. Something that I thought would bother me in the beginning is the lack of traditional customization options for a house and farm. But at no point during playing did it bother me that this aspect is missing, because there's a ton of customization options for your bazaar anyway. And there's literally so much to do in this game that I didn't feel the need for a customization system. The upgrade system for storages, barns, fields and the windmills are still there, of course. The farming itself is fun, but you should be aware that there are no complex mechanics or micromanagement here. It's pretty simplified to make room for the bazaar management and time with villagers. You basically water your crops twice a day, apply fertilizer if you want, and make sure to protect them from any storms. You can also occasionally harvest big versions of crops, and of course there's a quality ranking too. The game's progression is generally well done. You start with a small bazaar, selling basic crops and items, and as you unlock more stall slots, you can make some serious cash, which you will need. I especially liked that you actually have to have other interested sellers set up their own stall at the bazaar in order to get access to new items. The actual bazaar selling aspect on Saturdays is even more fun than expected, since you can experiment with different buffs from decorations, and you have to stay on your toes and watch out for customers who may want something that is not on display, so you're going to have to swap those items out, and you also gotta attract customers with your bell. I found that the minigame here keeps you just busy enough without overwhelming you. A quick side note on something I think is neat as well is that while the bazaar is only open on Saturdays, you still have access to your stall 24/7. So if your storage is getting a bit full at your house, you can take the first batch of items to your bazaar during the week rather than carrying it all there on Saturday morning. Visually, I played the game maxed out on a 4090, and I think it's the most impressive looking farming game so far. Everything looks very crisp, the animations are great, there are no apparent bugs, and the music is phenomenal and doesn't get stale.
Yes. How sweet.
The last thing I'd like to address is the actual difficulty. The game definitely starts on the easier side, with quick progression early on. Like, it really doesn't take long to unlock all your tools, for example. This can feel a bit too easy for people who generally prefer more challenging progression in farming games, but the game absolutely does ramp up in difficulty later on. Specifically once you level up your bazaar to around level 3. This is when resource requirements demand much higher quality stuff for the unlocks, and a single upgrade can wipe out all your earnings. So I'd say the game has a nice balance. It's not easy to streamline through it, but it's also not the most challenging farming game. An additional higher difficulty option for veterans would definitely be welcome. And this sentence concludes today's video. If your time was respected, a like or comment is very much appreciated.